Okay. Just somebody give me a quick heads up, my moderator, if I'm coming through. Just a thumbs up. Hello. Can you hear me? Somebody say, I can hear you in the chat. Okay, you can hear me. Okay. So look, just going to do a few things here. Let me get I got a little bit of an echo. So trying a different technical setup, got a different camera. Hopefully this will work. Boy, what a crazy, crazy world. So the first thing I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to answer a few questions that came up Sunday. And I apologize. There was nothing that I was trying to do that was to avoid questions or anything. I just got talking and decided to pray and completely forgot that I had them. So I'm going to deal with those questions. And some of them will relate to some of the things I want to talk about tonight. I just have a few topics that I want to touch on, but this could go on for a long time because there's a lot of just really crazy things going on. So let me shut down a browser here. Okay, so questions from Sunday. So here's the first question somebody asked. I did a sermon Sunday. I also preached. My first hour sermon was the trial of Jesus. And just to sum that up real quickly, there were about 20 rules that were broken during the trial of Jesus that were clearly set out in Jewish law. And for example, one of the things they did eventually was they made a unanimous declaration that he was guilty. This violated Jewish law because under Jewish law, there were between 20, they had to have at least 23 up to 71 in the Sanhedrin where he was tried. You had to have a majority vote to convict someone. You couldn't convict them the same day of death. So there had to be a 24-hour period, and then there had to be like a 3-day period before he was sentenced to death. But they just jammed everything into that trial. And the first two trials before Annas and Caiaphas, the older high priest, and depending on the translation you look at or how you understand it, the son-in-law, I'm not sure he was the son-in-law. He might have just been sort of the father of the priest. But Annas had 3 sons who served as high priests, and then Caiaphas came along, and he effectively controlled the high priest office from 7 A.D. to about 70 A.D. So he was very powerful, lived in a palatial, thing they called the palatial palace, 6,500 square foot home in ancient Jerusalem. It was a palace. So he... And so one of the things they did at the trial was they tried to, at least before dawn, that wasn't allowed to do in a death penalty case. They proclaimed him unanimously. And at least under the law at that time, as I understand it, was that if you had a unanimous verdict, it really was an innocent verdict, because if it was a unanimous verdict, the belief was, the rule was, it couldn't have been a valid verdict, because certainly not all of the Jewish men on the Sanhedrin would have agreed. But nevertheless, Jesus was there. So somebody says, I was in tears in the spirit because I couldn't understand why people sought Jesus. It seemed only for healing and to see miracles. Can I expound on that? Look, this is one of the problems. So there were many instances in the Old Testament, as long as Jesus was healing people, as long as he was feeding them, as long as he was giving them what they wanted, they were willing to follow him. But eventually, there was only the core group that was left. And really, when you get down into the Garden of Gethsemane, there were even just a few. But the point of all of this is that we really need to be ready to suffer for Jesus. We're not going to get everything we want. That's a health and wealth gospel. That's not biblical. That's just not the way it goes. And so, the question is correct that people only seem to follow Jesus as long as they're getting something out of him. But we're going to see, I think, as things get a little bit difficult here in the days, weeks, months, and maybe years ahead, that people are, I think people are going to drop off because they've been conditioned to believe that we're going to get these benefits from Jesus. So here's another question. Who was witnessing Jesus and gave reports? He was getting questioned by the Sanhedrin. So the answer to that question is, Peter, the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts. There was a gentleman who wrote a book a number of years back, and I think it was called The Trial of Paul. And he was a lawyer, and we like lawyers at FBC. His conclusion was that the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts were actually two parts of the legal brief that was presented to on behalf of Paul when he appealed his conviction to Rome, which was his right as a Roman citizen. And it's interesting because Acts sort of ends with, and Paul went to Rome. I mean, it just sort of ends, it kind of leaves you hanging. It doesn't finish the story. Certainly we know what happened at that trial. He was eventually executed, beheaded. But the way the story ends in Acts, it seems to be that I think there's a good case to be made that it was a legal brief. So what Luke did, Luke investigated. He talked to people. For example, he would have talked to Paul. That's why you have Paul giving pretty good detail on the story of Stephen. I talked about that a little bit at the end of my sermon on Sunday. So Luke investigated it and put it into the writing, which I think was at least one of the purposes was for a brief. So here's another question. Will climate change be the one world religion? The answer is, I think it's part of the one world religion that we're going to see, or part of this religious system in the end times. It's taking over everywhere. I'm going to talk about a couple things on that in a few minutes. It's crazy. Question from Edward. Can you expound on Elon Musk and the neurochip that's like a smartphone in our brain? Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about Neuralink, presentation that was done, and I think what are some of the Bible prophecy implications from that. This, I mentioned this to a friend. We were conversing about something, and believe me, I get sent all kinds of things, and some of the things are just crazy people, but sometimes these crazy people actually have a little bit of a point. And one of the videos somebody sent me was about some lady saying some things about Elon Musk's early life. And I don't know whether they're true or not. I am telling you, though, that with this Neuralink and the transhumanism and all these sort of things, I think something very serious is going on. I think we're seeing this technology of what's going to be the beast system being put in place. I don't think we're there yet, but I'll talk about Neuralink in just a moment. So here's somebody who has a question I think it's a question from Matthew 24. What is your take on how the rider on the white horse holding a bow could be rainbow and all the implications of that LGBTQ? I don't know if that's the way it works out. Certainly this transhumanism thing, this questioning gender, I don't have the stats sitting in front of me. I was reading through some things today. So I'm going to go off of my memory, which isn't always perfect at my age. But they did a survey of people who identified as LGBTQ. And the interesting thing about this, too, we've seen all the videos of Balenciaga, that clothing company, and just some of the most vile, egregious 2-year-old girls in sexual bondage gear, bears in sexual bondage gear. I saw a picture of Kylie Jenner, sort of taken from the back. She was covered with blood. I see them holding bloody baby heads and that type of thing. This is a sick, evil company. And the fact that it's taken somebody like Kim Kardashian 6 days to come out and say, oh, I think this needs to be looked into a little bit more, is just absolute, total, complete depravity and sickness. And at some point, I think we need to, you can pray for people, you can witness to them, but, you have to be led by the Spirit in this. And there is a point that you just give up on them. Because we're in a Romans 1 world, they've been given over. And I don't know that they'll ever come back. Some people will. I understand. You should try. But I remember there's an example, Jesus, we were just talking about. There was a time when people left him and the disciples said, "Hey, should we go after them?" And Jesus said, "Let them alone." I mean, can you imagine these people are still alive and Jesus saying, "Just let them be. Let them go. Let them follow their father, the devil." That's a pretty damning decision at that point. And I cannot play for you pictures. I'm just not comfortable showing you the pictures of this Balenciaga or whatever the company is. It also sounds like Balenciaga, like the God ball. It's really wicked. It's really evil. It's troubling to watch if you have any kind of a conscience. I mean, Kanye West, came out. Everybody said, "Oh, what a great Christian," and that type of thing. I think he did a church service. My recollection is with Marilyn Manson, who grew up in the Northeast Ohio, where I lived a good part of my early childhood up till the age of 15. Went to a Christian school in Canton, Ohio, and we had friends from our church that were teachers over there that had him in class, and this evil, wicked, depraved man. And Kanye brings him to a church service, is my recollection. And I think we need to, as I said, there's some people that need to put some distance between themselves and Kanye West, and people need to call out his rank anti-Semitism. I'm going to recommend that you follow a guy. His name is Duciami Washington. He's a black pastor, I think, in the DC area, and he wrote a book, The Black Church and Zionism, and he's tweeting on this subject and the anti-Semitism that he sees, and he's just doing an excellent job. He was on Caroline Glick's podcast last week. Highly recommend that you go and watch that. Very well-reasoned, well-thought-out pastor. Don't know him. I don't know any of his theological background. I just know in this particular subject, he's right on. Next question. Will an EMP, electromagnetic pulse is what that stands for, affect a solar power system? And the answer is, I don't know. Listen, the problem with solar power is that you cannot guarantee that I played clips from Dave Walsh Energy on Getter. You can follow him. Puts out a lot of solid information. I see him on Steve Bannon's War Room occasionally. He's right on. You need to have a power source that when you click it, it's on. In fact, maybe I could just go to that right now. So hang on a second here. Let me pull this up. I get really nervous when I share a screen here, and I'm using a thing called StreamYard, and it seems to work, but not always. So here's an article from the New York Times, and it says this is from a couple of days ago. Advice for Europeans: bundle up and get ready for outages. Now, this is just, you're going to see, this is a picture of Paris, the city of lights, and they're going to have rolling blackouts. And this is going to be in the middle of winter, and there's a big Arctic blast coming down now. And a lot of Europe is going to have rolling blackouts in the winter. We all the world talks about global warming. Cold weather kills more people than warm weather. This is going to be a very difficult winter for Europe. Now, some of the things look like they're doing okay. They've had kind of a mild late fall. So the storage facilities are full, but I don't know. They may get through this winter, but next winter is going to be very problematic. Russia's essentially cutting off everything. Europe came out the other day and said, hey, well, we're going to cap the price of oil that we're going to pay for oil from Russia at $60 a barrel. I mean, it's like you going into a store and saying, those bananas, those eggs are $8. I'll give you $1. Putin's just going to walk away from it. Then they're going to get nothing. The inability of the world's leaders to reason at this point in time is just is just absolutely stunning. So the question about the EMP, there's also a thing going on. I'll talk about that now. Down in, and sorry, I froze the video there. She's not giving us the evil eye or anything. But there's a whole county in North Carolina, Moore County, that's around Pinehurst, Aberdeen, Southern Pines, south of Raleigh, about an hour. They don't have power grid. They had somebody attack their transformers, substations, that type of thing. And there's all these things. I mean, this website from the News Observer, which I think is out of Raleigh. Look at this. It's they have all these power outages, and it's winter. People attack the power grid, shot up the substations, and now with supply chain problems, they don't know when they're going to get them back up. So if you're there and you don't have your own generator or anything, you're going to have a problem. It's sort of a snapshot of what could happen to us, because I think we're going to have problems with the power grid. I don't know what Russia's going to do. I don't know what terrorists are going to do. I know that Iran is out there trying to do things. I know China has a lot of these police stations we see around the world. I've heard there are 1,000 of them around the world. And they're there to keep Chinese nationals in line, they say. But there's also reports that Iran has hit teams that are out. Now, Iran denies this, but the power grid is very critical to modern society. There were estimates. There was a report done for the U.S. government a number of years ago, and the conclusion was that if we had an EMP attack, that 90% of the U.S. would be dead within 8 weeks. That's not a pleasant thought. We see what Russia's doing right now. Now, Ukraine has been launching some missile attacks into some air bases, taking out some bombers. I don't know what Putin's going to do. I haven't been able to get good information the last 2 days that I'm really comfortable with. But my understanding is there have been massive attacks by Russia, again, missile attacks on infrastructure in Ukraine. I was reading some articles today. They've been attacking, taking out power lines, power grids, substations, that sort of thing. A lot of Kyiv is in the dark. And there has been talk of a couple cities where maybe up to 5 or 6 million people live, that if the power grid is not able to be restored, they're going to evacuate them. That's like a city the size of Los Angeles being evacuated. And there's already been probably well over 10 million Ukrainians that have now moved from where they lived last February, less than a year ago. So this is going to be a big problem. There was also, I'm not sure if there's a connection. Some people think that this power grid thing is a bit of a false flag, but there was a big drag queen parade in Raleigh. It was very controversial. There were Christians that were protesting it. And their protesting were pretty much, they were just reading scripture and that sort of thing and praying about it. And I can't even tell you the name of the group that was doing it. It's just because you would stop watching our channel. It was about a male body part. And the head of the lead drag queen person was doing this now. So there's some people who are thinking if there's some connection between what happened to the Moore County power grid and this, and they're trying to blame Christians who attacked the power grid to protest this drag queen thing. And so this is part of the narrative now. Anytime something happens to LGBTQ people, it's going to be blamed on Christians. You're creating an environment of hate. You can see this with regard to the shooting that took place in Colorado Springs recently. It's all because, Christopher Rufo wrote a story about Drag Queen Story Hour. That's the narrative. And this is what they were doing through the government disinformation board. This whole narrative that they build up about anybody who disagrees with them is engaged in misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation, and it's all your fault for all these things that take place. So just watch out for that. It's all tied together. So back to what I was going to say about this survey that I saw, but I don't have a link to it. They did a survey of people like, do you identify as LGBTQ? So old people like me, the people in my age category who identified as that was like 0.8%. If you go, so that would be baby boomers. If you go down to the next group down, I can never remember what they call them. It was like 1.2%, and it went down. Millennials was like 3%, but the latest generation, what do they call it? Generation Z, it was 21% claim that they identify as LGBTQ. I saw an article somebody sent me from Australia where doctors want to talk about this issue because they've seen a spike of, it's like 800% increase in children who are claiming that they're transgender just in the last 4 or 5 years from what it was 4 or 5 years ago. There's something going on. I mean, this is all part of this process to just break down society. There are reports out there that male fertility has declined by half. The male sperm counts are half of what they were. So we live in this world. I've talked many times about the demographic collapse of Russia, demographic collapse of China, Japan, Iran. This is something we've really not faced in human history. So it's when you live in a world of 8 billion people and you're talking about demographic collapse, everybody looks at you like, well, you're crazy because there's still a lot of people out there. But there are major societies, some of whom are in regions that are identified in Bible prophecy that are in demographic collapse. That means they're getting to a place, a lot of analysts have said, if Russia's going to do anything with Ukraine, they have to do it like 2022, 2023, because they're not going to have the men to do this. Now, they've mobilized a lot of men. I don't know that I don't think Russia's handled it this well, but Russia has a lot of firepower. And whatever they've done to Ukraine, they're going to continue to do. They're going to completely obliterate the place. I saw video of some of the cities in eastern Ukraine, people out walking, and there's just nothing there. All the apartment buildings are just shells. I mean, it looks like Syria did. They brought in the guy not too long ago, who is the guy who sort of directed what they did in Syria. Go look at Syria. Go look at those drone videos. I've shown them many times of what's happened to mainly Sunni areas in Syria to get the Sunni people out because the Iranians want the Shia. And it's shocking, the similarities. So this is the world that we live in. So power grid problems down in Moore County. There was also this, I mentioned this, there was a presentation. For example, here's an article, watch a Neuralink robot insert electrodes into a dummy brain. And there is a company that beat Neuralink to the FDA trials. Musk is talking that they're going to be in FDA trials on Neuralink in 6 to 8 months. This is going to go a lot faster than anybody thinks. Because we live in this time, talk about all the time, acceleration, convergence, and that sort of thing. And so here, look at this. Elon Musk says, we ultimately want this robot to do essentially the entire surgery. And this is an article from just this last week, December 2nd, 2022. They had a big rollout of this 3 years ago. And there was a update that see some of the ones that I've seen. They had a Neuralink show and tell, what they're going to do and what they're ready to do. And I think this is, I was talking to a ministry friend tonight, and we concluded that this does seem to be the B system coming together. Because if you look at the, for example, you see here the part of the presentation where they were talking about we're going to help the blind to see. And the way the presentation was organized was the one guy was talking about he had a relative, I think, or a father who had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and he couldn't walk and he couldn't use his limbs. And so the way the presentation came across, and they talked about spinal cord injuries, and it was sort of like the people who can't walk will be able to walk with this Neuralink chip. And this Neuralink chip has dozens, 38,000 electrode connections. It's pretty amazing. It's way beyond the one that's in trials. And it's on track to do this, and it's being pushed by the richest man in the world. So it's those who can't walk will walk, those who can't see will see, and those who can't hear will hear, and a couple other things. And so think of that in terms of this beast system in the end times, and this Satan possessed man are going to try to mimic Christ. The lame walk, the blind see, and the deaf hear. It's the progression in the presentation was almost identical to the way Scripture talks about the ministry of Jesus. So understand. So there's like controversy right now. Has the 70th week already been fulfilled? Do we need to worry about it at all? And some people say no, it happened during Jesus' ministry. My point is, whatever happened during Jesus' ministry, the great imitator is coming and is going to try to mimic that. And you see the foundations of this. I'm not saying Elon Musk is the guy, but I'm just saying is the progression of what they're talking about doing mimics the ministry of Christ, his healing ministry. And it will be incredibly deceptive. And I'll be honest with you, I laid awake the other night thinking all night long about this. We are at a inflection point on a lot of different issues. So that's Neuralink. I'm going to close a couple of these down. So you can go get that Neuralink show and tell. It's about a 3-hour presentation if you want to watch it. That's Neuralink, NCW power outage. Okay, and then let's go here. I'll pull up the original list. So this is an article going around. Leo Hohmann did an article on it, and here's Joe Hoft at Gateway Pundit. Smart cities worldwide are being converted into open concentration camps. So there was I played a video on Sunday of a Charlie Vector quarantine camp that's being built in China. Now, one of these was burned. One of these had like 90,000 isolation pods in it, and it's like a cell. You got a bed, a wooden bed, you got a chair, you got a toilet, a sink, and they come and they put stuff. They sort of feed you on an industrial scale, like cattle are fed at a feedlot. So that's sort of a picture, though, I think, of what they want to do with these smart cities, where everything is going to be controlled. Everything you do is going to be measured. Everything you do will be fed through data. And so these giant server farms you see, I talk about them a lot. They're creepy because it's all information about us. And it's what people are going to do with this. So, so smart cities, there's a Silicon Valley whistleblower. I guess this is by Leo. This article is by Leo Hohmann at Gateway Pundit. And you can watch the interview with the guy. His name is Jabbi, Jabbi. So we talk about health passports, smart health cards, digital things. They were talking about this at G20. And again, just like this stuff with Neuralink and implanted chips that allow people to claim that I don't know that they'll do it, but they're imitating Christ. The lame walk, the blind see, the deaf hear. And then they're doing the data for control and how they're going to monitor everything. And it's not coming. It's already here. It just hasn't been implemented everywhere yet. I did a study. And by the way, Elon Musk in his presentation at the Neuralink thing, he made a very good point. He said, we're not going to make anything. It's not going to be that big of a deal change. The only difference is we're going to implant the link in your brain, the smartphone. And I've played clips of people talking about that. The guy from Nokia cell phones, or Motorola, at World Economic Forum, saying, listen, we talk about 5G. We're going to 6G, man. 6G's coming a lot quicker than you think, and we'll be able to do anything, and your body's going to be a smartphone. And so Elon Musk's point at the Neuralink thing was, hey guys, we're not doing anything different. You're all tied to your smartphone. I mean, go give up your smartphone for 8 hours and see how you do, because everything's on there. And look, I'll be honest, I use it for everything. I order food with it. I check the weather. I check traffic. I check to see if there's anybody on the golf course that's going to be in my way if I want to go play. And you use it for everything. And every now and then I'll sit down and my battery's draining. I need to close down some apps. I cannot tell you how many times I'll count them. And it's like 40, 45 apps that I have open that I'm using. And all that stuff is transferring data. So the notion that we're going to be completely off the grid or anything, I think, is completely gone. And that's what Elon Musk says. He says, listen, we're just taking the smartphone data collection thing and making it a little more convenient for you, because you don't got to fumble around in your pocket for it, or, you won't leave your brain on a counter someplace like you leave your smartphone. Which has happened to me. We drove off in South Dakota and I'd left my smartphone sitting by the sink in the restroom. So it happens. And, it's happening so much quicker. And so we have the smart cities issue. And here's another one. Here's a friend in the UK. Well, I think she's in the UK. If she's not in the UK, she sent me this from the UK. By the way, I think I'm going to be doing a conference in Scotland near the end of March next year, and maybe something down in England as well. So I'll announce that far in advance. But look, climate lockdown's coming. You will be trapped in your suburb and happy about it. And this is a great article. And in fact, this article also has, let me see where my, well, it didn't open up. I forced to close something, and I'll cover it Sunday, but we can cover this for now. Shut this down a little bit. I just have something that opened up full screen here and blocks what I want to read about. Well, here it is. Actually, I can probably do it. So in Oxfordshire County, I don't know if that's how you say it, but let me get this over to the right screen. So Oxfordshire County has come out with a travel plan. They've come out with like a smart city plan. And so what they're going to do is they're going to divide the city into like Oxford, England, where they have the great universities. They're going to have, or the great university. They're going to create like zones, and they're going to be zones where you're not going to be allowed to go in. And you're only going to be allowed to go from one zone to another a certain number of times. And if you violate it, first of all, they're going to have like a grid set up so that your vehicle will be disabled if you try to go like downtown into the downtown central business district. But if you go from one zone to another and you've exceeded your number of allocated trips, and they're going to base it on like a family unit. So if you have 3 cars, you're going to be allowed, let's say, 50 trips in a month. If you have 2 cars, you'll be allowed 50 trips. So in other words, some of your cars aren't going to be as functional as somebody who only has 2 cars. But if you go do too many trips, it's going to be a fine of like 80 to 150 pounds for violating that. and they're going to bankrupt people. And the whole thing is designed to keep you in a confined area to cut down on your emissions. And this is coming. It's I had so anyway. So this is the Oxford travel plan. This is what they're planning on doing, and they're going and this is coming very, very quickly. And this person, Joe Nova, who I think it's a she, wrote this article. Uh, Listen, in the WEF's own words, this rearrangement of cities is absolutely about climate change. And we're going to talk about the madness of the 15 minutes. So you're gonna be limited to like 15 minutes from your home. Now think of that in terms of NEOM. It's going to be a city 100 miles long, but the whole thing is designed that everything is within 5 or 10 minutes, a 5 or 10 minute walk of your house. Your groceries, recreation, all of that stuff is going to be close. And it's like a modern, huge prison. Kind of reminds me of that movie or TV show, The Prisoner, that used to be on when I was younger. But look at this in the WEF's own words. And so I went over, I clicked on the link, and look at this. The surprising stickiness. This is a World Economic Forum article. The surprising stickiness of the 15-minute city. It was written back in March. And so this is, you have this thing that's all tied into the cities and urbanization, World Economic Forum, and this is what they're talking about. This is that. I think this will open up. I think I was logged in. Yeah. So here's this. It looks sort of like Charlie Vector thing that they've turned into this phenomenal website. So if you look at like urban governance, it'll take you to all these different articles. I guess I didn't sign in yet, but anyway. So, and you have ESG and all this stuff. It's all related. So this is what's coming. And I hope you can understand the convergence, interconnectedness, acceleration of all these things that I've been talking about. This is happening very, very quickly. And they're talking about, I just saw a video from Bill Gates talking about having zero emissions by 2050. And one of the things he's doing with that, by the way, is getting rid of fossil fuels, but using biofuels. He says, well, we got a problem here. Fossil fuels cost, say, $2 a gallon, and biofuels cost $6 a gallon. But we'll figure out how to get over that little economic hurdle. And maybe this is why he's buying a lot of farmland. Now, he doesn't own all the farmland. He's not buying. He owns like 0.03 or 0.3% at most of all the farmland in the United States. He owns a few 100,000 acres. He owns 50,000 acres, not too far from where I live in central Ohio. There's 920 million acres of farmland in the United States. So he owns 300,000. So it's a very teeny tiny small number. But part of it is he's developing biofuels because I guess he needs the money, Divorce may have only left him with $100 billion. And, it's kind of, things are kind of tight on that. And so the guy who can't afford steak who can afford any steak that he wants to make it so you can't eat any. So this is what's coming. And then there's this, there's a report at CNBC that global shipping demand from China is collapsing. It's down 40%. Now, I've mentioned this before. So this is marinetraffic.com. So this is Shanghai, the port of Shanghai, Guangzhou, and there's some cities there. So I can go up here and I can set filters. So, for example, if I want to see cargo vessels and tankers, I just click on those. And you can see that this is a current live map of what's going on in the area of Shanghai. So you can see, Sorry about that. I don't mean to make you sick by zooming in and out. You can see Japan, Korea, but you can see the shipping. You can see the shipping lanes. If we can move over here to the United States, you can see. And so this is a live map. Red are tankers, green are cargo ships. But this is a new category. I did not see this before. So if you take out cargo vessels and tankers, and you have unspecified, these are ships that used to be on the live map, and they are now for where they're parked. These are ships that are no longer in service. But so it looks like, well, there's a few ships. No. Zoom in on this. These are cargo ships that are sitting there off of Shanghai, probably the busiest port in the world, with nothing to do. You'll see this. It says, see how they all say unspecified ships? And this is the last satellite position that they read. But look at all of these ships just sitting there. Global shipping is collapsing. That has huge economic impact. So look, not trying to scare you, trying to prepare you for what's coming. Let's see. So I'm going to try to, let's see. So let me go off of stop screen and go over here and see if I can see some. I don't know if there's any questions in here. If you have a question, I'll look at that real quickly. I've been on about 45 minutes, and I know that's short for me. I'm not sick. I'm not ill. Please pray for my wife, though. She's still struggling with a cold and that type of thing. So let me look at this and see if I have any. Let's see. So I can't talk about the state-approved treatments for Charlie Vector because that's going to get us in trouble. So I'm going to try to do, I have somebody who's going to get on to talk about dinosaurs in the Bible, and hope to do that after the first of the year. By the way, I'm going to do a radio program with a YouTube interview, maybe from Jerusalem Sunday night after I get there, with the Goslings. That's a YouTube channel. And then also Tuesday night from Jerusalem, it'll be in the morning over here. I'll be doing a Stand Up for the Truth with David Fiorazzo next Tuesday live. Hopefully, if we can work out about that. So, let's see. Boozer, amen. Somebody said, yeah, I mentioned dinosaurs. There's a guy came to church. He has a book on dinosaurs. It's actually pretty good. Makes a biblical case for dinosaurs coexisting with man, which is something that I agree with. So I don't see anything coming up. I guess I finally broke the internet. I've answered every question that might come up. So somebody says here, somebody say, what is coming? More of this. We are, I think you need to prepare for some tough times. Okay. Now, we get out of here one of two ways. We die or rapture. I don't know the date of either one of those. And you need to live the right kind of life. Everything. So, listen, I'm going to terminate this. Appreciate so much. Well, I'll see one question here. Let me see what this says. Could the 2 million man army be made of robots, not human? Well, it's actually talks about a 200 million army, and that's a controversial issue. I happen to think it's a man army. I think it says it comes from the East. I've noted that China and India will soon have 200 million men in their countries that have no prospect of a female wife. Now, what do you do with that if you're the leader? Well, one of the ways you deal with that is you go to war. So I don't know that that's how it's going to go, but it could be. Let's see. Tim, you said all this being gradual. Remember the saying that I said? It came from a Hemingway book. The guy asked the question, how did you go bankrupt? And he says, two ways, gradually, then suddenly. So I don't know if we're still in the gradual phase. I think we're getting into the sudden phase. So look, probably no update on Sunday morning this week, but I will, like I said, have the thing with the Goslings on Sunday night. Hopefully, may do a couple of reports from Israel over the next week, and I should be home if everything goes right. I may be doing one Sunday morning, the 18th. We'll see. The trip back is not the best trip. I have about a 9-hour layover in Boston, which means I could probably maybe PM will drive out to Boston and pick me up, and I'll save some time. So anyway, God bless you. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe, like, share, all of that stuff. If you don't have our Fellowship Bible Chapel app, please go and download it. It's all free. And God bless, and I'll talk to you probably next time from Israel. God bless.